Hello, and good morning. Thank you all for coming so early to be in this extremely cold room. So this talk is about formal barriers to proof-of-stake protocols. And it is joint work with Jonah Brown-Cohen, who is a postdoc at KDH, Arvind, and Matt from Princeton. Good. So, just the basics first. What is a blockchain? So every cryptocurrency out there works by maintaining a directed graph of blocks. So transaction happens, transactions get included in the block. So a block contains confirmed transactions. Here where a block might look like, it has some semantic information like its number, has a pointer to a previous block, directed graph, has a bunch of transactions. Transaction is something like Alex gave Matt $100, signed by Alex. Right? And then, boom, here's another block. Bunch of new transactions, pointer to the previous one, and so on. So, transactions are happening out there. If a transaction is not a block, we would say that a transaction is not valid by definition. Cool. Well, how are blocks made? Blocks in cryptocurrencies, for the most part, are made by these entities called miners. So miners, validate new transactions and add them to the blockchain. Very important job for a blockchain to work. Now, a fundamental problem that every cryptocurrency in this regime needs to solve is which miner gets to make a new block. So the first and dominating regime is that of proof of work. So the idea is that the cryptocurrency will select a random miner with probability proportional to how much work they put in, so how much computational power. So one CPU, one vote. There's a succinct way to say this. And it's done by crypto puzzles. It's a very smart thing. We're not going to talk about it. The main alternative to proof of work is something called proof of stake. So there, the idea is that you want to select a random miner with probability proportional to their wealth. So if you have X percentage of the total number of currency, I would like to select you with probability X at every step. So one coin, one vote. Okay. So today's topic will be, can proof-of-stake protocols achieve security similar to that of proof-of-work protocols? And we'll be thinking this, we're in C, as a incentive-driven analysis. So we'll assume that participants are not these like trolls that want to destroy the universe as a more security type of approach. We'll assume that are self-interested agents that are trying to just maximize their revenue. Okay. So here's what the plan is for today. I'm going to define a model for analyzing incentives in proof-of-stake protocols. Then I'm going to talk about a set of properties. Every protocol in my model will satisfy one of them, at least one of them. And finally, for every property, I'll give you an attack. An incentive-based attack. Okay? And disclaimer, I am not giving you investment advice. Okay? So please don't ask me. But more of that to come. Okay, so let's see. Our protocol is going to be very, very simple. Here's how proof-of-stake protocols work. The protocol says, I think you should mine on top of this block. Then, via some magical method, the protocol selects a miner, and then, or a coin, I should say, and the coin, the owner of the coin, the miner, will get to add a new valid block on top of the block that the protocol specified. Repeat. Okay. That's the blueprint. So we'll be defining this via two functions. A validating function, so that takes as input a block, and it tells you thumbs up, thumbs down. This block is good, this block is not good. Obvious. And the other one is a mining function. So that function takes as input a block, a coin, and a timestamp, and it outputs a new valid block. So what I'm going to ask for is for the validating function to be efficiently computable. I want everyone to be able to look at any block in the blockchain and say, this is a good block, this is a bad block. And I also want the mining function to be efficiently computable, at least by the owner of C. Otherwise, I'm back to proof of work. Okay, that's the whole point, for the mining function to be efficiently computable. So here's a block. I can use a mining function with a certain coin on that block at some timestamp, and it's going to output a new block, and everyone can check if that block is valid or not. Okay. So far, so good. Here are some a little bit perhaps more controversial assumptions that I do know some protocols that don't satisfy them. One of them would be chain dependence. So if I look at a block, the only information that will be relevant to see if it's valid or not is just like the path from that block to the beginning of time. And the other property is monotonicity. So if something is valid now, it's going to be valid forever. Okay. The intuition behind them is that without them, someone can withhold messages and launch something that's called an eclipse attack. So let's see. What I'm saying is the validity of this only depends on things in the red cycle, and so not on this or this or this. And if I told you this is valid, it's going to be valid forever. Yeah, so we don't want it to be the case that like there's a block missing here, and when you hear about it, this becomes invalid all of a sudden. Okay. Good. What remains is for me to tell you where you should mine. So we consider protocols called longest chain variants. So longest chain variant basically says that there's some scoring function that's monotone, and you should mine on top of the thing that has the highest score. Okay, that's it. So if this has some score, then this has a higher score, and the protocol just tells you mine on top of the thing with a high score. Okay. So like that. Good. Questions about the model? Awesome. I promise it will be simple. Good. Let's see my properties now. First property is going to be called delocally predictable. So that says a coin is delocally predictable if the owner of that coin can tell in advance if there will exist a block whose dth predecessor is the current block. That is going to be valid, right? So I'm here. I'm somehow magically able to predict that, oh, with this coin, I'll be able to mine this block B, whose dth predecessor is A. Okay. Observation, everything is one locally predictable, because I'm able to predict if there's going to be the next block with that coin. That's what the mining function is used for. Okay. There's a slightly stronger variant of that, which is called globally predictable, which says not just the owner of coin, anyone can check if the owner of the coin or that coin will be eligible to mine. Now that sounds a little bit silly, but here's an example mining function that does this. For example, a block is valid if and only if the hash of the coin at the timestamp is less than some threshold. Right now, everyone can check if a certain coin at some timestamp will be below the threshold or not. It sounds a little bit silly, Surprise, surprise, some protocols satisfy it. You'll talk about this later. Good, so that's predictability. The final property I want to talk about is the negation of predictability, which is recency. So a protocol is derecent, or a coin is derecent, if the owner of that coin cannot efficiently predict whether there will be a valid one whose dth predecessor is the current block. Okay? Just a negation of delocal predictability. So intuitively, that would mean that whether something is whether I'm going to be eligible to mine or not in the next t blocks depends on what's going to happen in the next t blocks. That's the intuitive kind of explanation. Okay. Very simple observation: for any d, a coin C is either delocally predictable, d recent, by definition. And that's the properties. Questions? Awesome. Now, step number 3. For each property, I'm going to give you an attack. So say I have something that's predictable. And intuitively, why is that a bad idea? Here's why. And these attacks are not new, by the way. They've been known to work for proof of work protocols. It's just that things are much, much worse here. So here's the attack. It's called predictable selfish mining. Say I managed to create a new block B. Now, the protocol should say that, oh, I should publish B so people can extend it. The attack says, don't. Just wait it out. Wait it out and try to create your own little private chain. Why is that a good idea? Well, since I'm winning in proportion to my wealth, I should be more likely to win if no one else is trying to win. Good. Now the problem. So this is a problem already in proof of work, kind of. The problem here is that I don't even need to take any risks to see if I'm going to be succeeding in creating this long fork, because it's efficiently computable to do this. So I can predict, for a D locally predictable, I can predict precisely, even with one local predictability, how fast I'm going to build the long chain. So if in a one-off event, I manage to get lucky and create a very long chain, a very long private chain, I can launch this attack. And with global predictability, there's zero risk, because I can also check how fast everyone else for sure will be able to mine. Okay? So for local predictability, I can just compare to the average rate or whatever, historical stuff. With global predictability, I can literally just check whether anyone else is going to win or not. Good. So, doesn't sound so terrible, perhaps. The main problem with this is that I can use this as a sub-protocol to launch even more devastating attacks. So for example, I can use predictable selfish mining to launch something that's called predictable double spending. So here's how that would work. Say I know I'm going to have this long chain. I'm going to get lucky a lot of times in a row. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to buy a bunch of stuff in the public chain that everyone else is using. And the moment I receive that stuff, I'm going to publish my long chain. Now in this long chain, I'm going to be using the same money to do other things. So effectively, I've used my money twice. Okay? And that's the attack, with no risk at all. Questions? Jason.
I thought the chain who gets to next is deterministic, so if you use the first block and the next block needs to be used in the same person.
Which block? This?
Yes, I thought you said that there's a function telling you which point gets to go next. So
Yes.
the first block from the same person.
This and this?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. It depends on time. So the mining block takes as input a block, a coin, and a timestamp. Notice that, good, that's a great question actually. So if time was not an issue, notice that someone could just crash a cryptocurrency on their own. If I knew that I'm the only person who gets to mine a new block and that will never ever change, no matter how much long time passes, I could just say, no block, Ethereum goes down forever. Good. Thanks. Awesome. Good. So that's what happens if you have a predictable protocol. What will happen if you have a recent protocol? Now, recall that recent protocols, what the property they satisfy is that whether you're eligible to mine or not depends on what has happened in the most recent block. So here's what that means. That effectively means that if I see a fork naturally, so there's some block and I see two people extending it, then those things happen for natural. It's not the case that necessarily they're bad people. These things happen from natural network delay sometimes. These things keep growing. Now, since the block is recent, that means that whether I'm able to mine on top of this or this depends on what has happened. Otherwise, I would have known here that I was able to mine using this coin. So therefore, that means that mining on top of this and this, I'm more likely to win than on either. So I'm effectively kind of doubling the probability that I'm making the block. Okay. So this is called the nothing at stake problem, because I have no reason to pick a block and try to extend it. And notice that this is very crucial. So in proof of work, that's not the case, because if I waste work and computational power to extend this, I don't get to use that same computational power to extend B. Okay? Exactly. So it's free. So if I have a coin and it's a de-recent coin, that means that the probability, like my expected revenue from mining this and like trying to extend both is higher than my expected revenue for trying to mine either. I'm saying for proof of work, this is not a big deal because I don't get to use the same computational cycles for both. But here, the whole point is that I shouldn't be using any computational power. Good, and that's it. So what did I talk about today? I showed you a model, I showed you some properties, and for every property, I showed you some attacks. So definitely there are incentive-driven security issues that are they're not present in proof of work, that are present in proof of stake, and they're more kind of exacerbated. There's definitely a trade-off between local predictability and recency, so that's kind of unavoidable. So every protocol you have that fits in our model is going to be one of the two, by definition. And there is a trade-off. So these attacks are not necessarily devastating, right? That doesn't mean that your favorite proof of stake protocol will never ever work, even if it fits in our model. But there's absolutely no reason for global predictability. Right. So these attacks are not devastating, but they are unavoidable, and there's definitely a lot of value in understanding what the hell is happening. So if there is a protocol out there that fits in our model, definitely vulnerable to one of these attacks. So we should really put some effort in understanding how much these attacks are a problem. That's it. Thanks.
I have a question about the proof of stake model. The timestamp is important, the identity of the coins are important. So because the timestamp is important and the identity of the coins are important, you could potentially be looking at all of these extensions at the same time as there's some other tree going on, waiting for the time that your coin is important given the previous coin that you mined. Is that
Sure. Right.
And there's sort of no cost to maintaining all these extra long chains.
But other people who are following the protocol will do this a lot faster than you, right? So if I understand correctly, you're saying like, for sure, if I know that as time progresses, at some point my coin will be valid to mine, I could just wait and create a big ass chain where like I'm the only one with blocks, right? But the honest people, let's say, or the people following the protocol will do this much faster than you. Right. I mean, it's the same thing in proof of work, right? Like you can just start your own, you go to the beginning of time and start your own Bitcoin, right? Where you're just the only person mining. Sure.
The actual systems that use
Mm-hmm.
proof of stake that really work in the real world, not just an academic essential startup company.
Okay. What?
I'm asking.
So I think the two biggest. So the question was, what about real companies out there? Do they fit in the model? Are the attacks a big deal? What the hell is happening? I think the two biggest examples that don't fit are Algorand and Casper for different reasons. I mean, the main reason is finality. If you have a protocol where there's some sort of finality, like, okay, there's a stamp by God that says this is valid, and if I ever see something that comes up like longer ever, I'm going to say this is not valid. So that does not fit in our protocol. This model doesn't apply. I think Ouroboros does fit in our protocol. So that's another, like, I think Ouroboros is like top 5 or top 6 in like coin market, if you believe that. And it does fit in our model. But if people are doing undetectable, nothing at stake, like it's undetectable, right? So it's not clear. So it's not clear if these are like devastating things that are happening, if they're happening, and so on. But we definitely don't understand them.